In the heart of the Roman amphitheaters, where the roar of the crowd celebrated every thrust, every fall, every last breath of a man was hidden. A truth that was rarely revealed, while the spectators shouted for more beneath the invisible sands. For most, there existed a parallel world, a dark, functional place known as the Spoliarium. This space did not appear in the frescoes or in the heroic tales of the battles. But it was there, in that forgotten corner, where the path ended for those who did not make it out alive. The term Spoliarium comes from the Latin spolia, which means spoils. That's no coincidence. The fallen gladiator was not treated as a human being who had given his life, but rather as property useful until his very last breath. Once dead, his body was dragged away, out of the public sight, often by a slave or attendant. He was taken to this underground space. There, he was stripped of his weapons, armor, and any other valuable belongings. These belongings, in most cases, were not considered part of the gladiator, but rather the property of the Lannister gladiators, owner of the state if the fighter was part of the public games funded by magistrates. The body, on the other hand, no longer served anyone. Accounts of what happened next to those bodies are scarce, fragmented, and often contradictory. Some ancient texts, such as those by Suetonius or Martial, touch on the fate of the defeated only tangentially or with irony, but they almost never describe the process clearly. What we know, for the most part, comes from archaeological studies, funerary inscriptions, and contextual reconstructions. One theory, supported by modern discoveries, suggests that many of these bodies were thrown into mass graves located outside the city walls. These graves were used for people without resources or family, and in them, human remains have been found mixed together haphazardly, showing signs of violent deaths. Although there is no absolute certainty that all of them were gladiators, several experts believe that at least some were, given the types of wounds on the bones and the location of the remains. Another possible fate? Mentioned by some sources and interpreted through funerary art and the comments of moralists, this fate would be even more cruel. Some bodies, especially those of lesser-known individuals or those without sponsors, may have been given to the beasts of the amphitheater or left out to be consumed by scavenging animals. This idea is supported by the fact that the games were not only a spectacle of combat, but also of death, in all its forms. However, this specific practice, the use of human corpses as animal feed within the amphitheater, has not been conclusively proven and should be understood as a possibility suggested by some literary sources. And it was reinterpreted in later centuries, often with a moralizing tone. What is more solidly documented is that a few gladiators, very few, managed to transcend that brutal depersonalization. Fighters who had earned fame, honor, and respect, especially those who died after many victories, could receive a more dignified burial. In certain cases, their bodies were claimed by the Hellenisti, or even by wealthy admirers who pay for their funerals as a tribute. Archaeology provides remarkable examples, such as the necropolis of Ephesus in Asia. There, tombs were found decorated with reliefs depicting combats and the names of gladiators. Another significant discovery was made in Liternum, near Naples, where tombs were uncovered with inscriptions that explicitly mentioned the deceased's profession as a gladiator. These burials, however, were the exception. The vast majority died and vanished, as if they had never existed. In the Roman collective imagination, death carried enormous symbolic weight. It marked the end of virtus, of duty, and also the beginning of remembrance, if that was the fate of the deceased. For Roman citizens, a proper burial not only ensured the bodis rest, but also preserved the family's honor. That's why the fact that so many gladiators died without a name, without rights, without a grave, was a clear mark of their lower social status. They were tools for entertainment, not complete people in the eyes of the system. The Spoliarium, therefore, became not just a physical place, but a symbol, the boundary between those who were remembered and those who were cast aside. This underground space has been immortalized in one of the most powerful works of modern art. The painting Spoliarium, by the Filipino artist Juan Luna, was awarded in 1884. Although painted centuries later, It captures with brutal precision the scene of gladiators' bodies being dragged away by slaves, stripped and forgotten while the crowd celebrates. That image not only represents the past, but also serves as a critique of systems that celebrate death as entertainment and forget the value of human life. Behind the sacrifice, Luna understood that history does not repeat itself, but it rhymes in that the Spoliarium was not exclusive to Rome. From an archaeological perspective, few spoliaria have been excavated with clear identification. Most of the information about these spaces comes from indirect accounts or deductions based on underground structures attached to the amphitheaters. Excavations at the Colosseum in Rome and at amphitheaters such as those in Pula, Croatia, and Merida, Spain, have revealed tunnel systems and compartments where these post-combat tasks were likely carried out. But since these places were also used to store animals, weapons, and stage machinery, it's difficult to say with certainty which areas were used strictly for the bodies. Once again, these are archaeological hypotheses based on context and functional use. Another aspect that is rarely discussed, but fundamental, is the role of family members when they existed. Some gladiators were freed former slaves, while others were free men who chose the arena out of economic necessity. In those cases, there are records indicating that relatives tried to recover the bodies in order to give them a proper burial, sometimes paying large sums to do so. This gesture was seen as an act of love, but also as a way to wash away the shame associated with the fate of dying as a gladiator. However, these episodes are rare in the records and reinforce the marginal status of most of the fighters. In the end, what remains of the Spoliarium is not just a stone echo beneath the Colosseums, but an idea. The idea of how much value we place on the body once it no longer breathes. In ancient Rome, that value was determined by class, fame, and usefulness. Most gladiators, even after fighting with honor, received nothing more than oblivion. Roman society built a system where entertainment was valued more than compassion, and the audience walked away satisfied without looking back. Today, as archaeologists recover their bones and historians piece together their names, we have to wonder, how many more still lie beneath the sand, waiting to be recognized? If you're interested in the lesser-known aspects of Roman history, like this one about the fate of fallen gladiators, we invite you to subscribe to the channel. Leave a like to support this kind of historical content, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos. And of course, let us know in the comments, what do you think about the Spoliarium? And did you already know about this raw side of the Roman world?